I was on my way to a training thing my company insisted I attend. The highway closed after a wreck, and the detour signs pushed me into a town I'd never heard of. I pulled off at a 2-story place called the Golden Rest. The paint on the sign had peeled back to raw wood. A torn banner still promised weekly rates and free breakfast. The parking lot held 6 cars and a bus that looked abandoned. The air smelled like damp carpet even before I walked inside. The lobby was too bright for the hour. Fluorescent bars hummed above the front desk. A basket of polished red apples sat under a card. "Please take one." The apples had waxy spots where someone's fingers had rubbed. A bell sat on the counter, and beside it, a plastic sign. "Night clerk on duty. Ring bell." I didn't need to. The clerk was already there, sitting on a stool with a crossword book and a mug that said, "World's okayest grandpa." "Road's closed," he said before I could talk. "Lucky for us. Unlucky for you." He had chalk-colored eyebrows and a voice like he needed to clear his throat. I told him I needed one night. He slid a registration card across the counter and watched me sign it. "You a smoker?" he asked. "We only got smoking or nothing." "None," I said. He gave me a key card in a sleeve. "Second floor, end of the hall. You'll hear the ice machine, but you'll stop hearing it. Breakfast is there." He nodded toward a cold block of hard muffins behind the apple basket. "We keep coffee hot all night." I said thanks. He didn't ask for a credit card. I don't know why that stuck with me, but it did. The hallway was long and tired. The carpet had a pattern that wanted to hide stains and failed. The ice machine hummed like it had a fever. At the end near my room, a door for the stairwell had a fold of masking tape over the latch so it wouldn't click shut. The tape had gray lint worked into it from hands. Inside, my room smelled like someone had sprayed something sweet to cover something else. The window opened to the back of the hotel, where the land dropped off into a ravine with a trickle of water that sounded like a faucet left on in another room. I set my bag on the dresser, used the bathroom, sent my boss a text, and lay down with the TV on mute. People walked by in the hall over and over. Footsteps, voices, the clack of a wheelie bag. I told myself it was the sound of normal life and closed my eyes. I woke to a man shouting. It wasn't a distant shout. It was right outside my door. A woman's voice answered, low and firm, telling him to stop. I stood and listened. The man said he wanted his key back. The woman told him to go downstairs and that she would call the police if he didn't go. I heard a smack, a sound like a palm on drywall, and the woman said, very clear, "Try that again." A door slammed hard enough to shake the frame against my shoulder. The hallway went quiet. I looked through the peephole and saw nobody. I waited, hand on the knob, and then I let go and sat back on the bed. I told myself people have fights. It wasn't my business. I almost believed it. Sleep came only as a heavy fog that stuck to my face. I woke to my phone's buzz. A text from an unknown number. "Do you have the silver then?" I stared at it and deleted it, thinking the clerk had recycled a number in their system or something else mundane. I was thirsty. I didn't want to drink from the bathroom tap. I opened my door and went for ice. The hallway had that cold air you only get in old buildings at night. The sound of the machine grew louder as I got closer. I could smell bleach and coffee grounds. The ice machine was not working. I pressed the lever and nothing came out. there was a small hand-lettered sign, "Ice out. Try first floor." I stood there anyway with the plastic bucket and the crinkly bag and felt like an idiot. On the way back, I heard crying in a room 2 doors from mine. A steady, leaky kind of crying. Low. Exhausted. I paused. I had no idea what to do with that either. I went back into my room, shut the door, and locked it. I ate a muffin from my bag even though it was stale. I fell asleep with the light on. I woke again to noise that was not voices. It was fists on a door. Not 3 taps with a pattern. Just sustained, angry thudding. I swung my legs off the bed, stood, and went to the peephole. It was at the far end of the hall near the stairwell, the door with the masking tape latch. A man in a leather jacket was pounding on the stairwell door with both hands. He turned, panicked, and ran. A woman followed, holding her phone up like she was filming. I cracked my door and leaned out. "What's going on?" I asked. The woman looked at me as if she didn't expect me to speak. She had braids pulled tight and a sweatshirt with a college logo. "He says someone's in the stairwell," she said. "He says they won't let him go down." She sounded embarrassed by the whole idea. "It's probably stuck," I said. The man with the jacket came back, shaking, eyes huge. He pushed past us both and hammered on another door, then pulled at the handle. He was sweating through his shirt. "No one's answering," he said. "That guy downstairs said use the stairs." He said the elevator sticks. He said... He stopped because something rattled behind the stairwell door, a slow scratch like nails catching on the wire glass. The woman laughed, then stopped herself. "It's a raccoon," she said. "God, calm down." The man stared at the wire glass. I did too. In the rectangle of light behind it, there was a blur of movement. Not an animal. I thought of someone with their jacket pulled up around their face. The handle moved from the other side. The masking tape on the latch stretched and held. The handle slowly dropped. "Forget it," I said. "Take the elevator." The clerk said. The man started again. The door moved again, testing the tape, a little harder. Then it was still. We all stood breathing in the bright, empty hall. The woman rolled her eyes at me and walked to the elevator. The man followed her. When the doors closed, I heard the stairwell door rattle again, a staccato run of shakes like someone shivering. I slept after that because my body forced me to, like a power cut. I woke in dull daylight. My muscles ached from the way I'd held myself. I took a shower that ran warm, then cold, then warm. I didn't shave. I went downstairs for coffee and walked past the apples. Someone had taken a bite out of one and put it back. The lobby looked the same, but it smelled different. The air had a metallic edge. The clerk wasn't in his stool. The crossword book sat open with a mechanical pencil holding the place. I called hello. No answer. The office door was propped open with a box of laundry detergent. The room behind the desk was small and packed with old paper. A radio was playing a station where someone talked about traffic. I leaned, then stepped through. "Hello?" He was on the floor. At first it looked like he was fixing something under the desk, but then I saw the angle of his head and the shape on the carpet where the color had soaked in. He was face down. His fingers were curled into the floor. There was a smell I won't describe except to say that I knew what it was in my bones, even though I had never been near it before. I took a step forward and my foot slid. I caught myself on the desk and stood there, bent at the waist, breathing hard. There were marks on the floor, not footprints. Drag marks where something heavy had been moved and then stopped. The heavy thing was the old man. He had been pulled from under the rolling chair. A streak went toward the hallway where the ice machine was, and then went back to his body, as if someone had changed their mind halfway through. I left the office. I didn't run. My body didn't know what to do with the energy my brain was giving it. I went back into the lobby and dialed the number taped to the phone. It rang and rang. I hung up. I tried my cell. No bars. The screen said emergency calls only. I stood there while the radio in the office kept telling me about traffic I would never be in. The woman with the college sweatshirt came down the elevator. She stopped when she saw my face. "What?" she said. I pointed. She set her lips, walked around the desk, looked, and walked back out again, carrying her phone like it was broken. "Christ," she said softly. Then, "We have to get out." We tried the front doors. They were locked. The push bars didn't budge. We both pressed until the metal flexed. A key would open them from the inside, but there was no key in the lock. "I'm going to find the maintenance guy," she said. "There is no maintenance guy," I said. "Someone has a key." I went with her. We checked the breakfast room, the little alcove with the coffee and the hard muffins. A door marked "Employees Only" led to a short hall with a washer and dryer, a storage closet, and a door with a keypad. She didn't hesitate. She put her shoulder into the storage door. It opened. Inside were brooms, a vacuum with a broken belt, a bucket with brown water, and a rack of clean sheets in plastic. The closet was big enough to walk into and turn around. On the floor, in the back, was a purse. The woman crouched and opened it. "Not mine," she said. The wallet had an ID for a woman named Bree with a picture of a smile. There was lipstick spilled in the bottom. There were no keys. "Maybe the clerk had them on him," I said. The words felt stupid and blunt, stating the obvious only to make noise. She stood and brushed her hands on her thighs like she'd touched something dirty. We looked at each other without speaking. Then we went to the office again. We didn't touch him. His jacket had ridden up and showed a strip of pale lower back and the elastic band of his underwear. There was no key ring near him, no hook on the wall. When we turned back to the lobby, a tall man was standing at the elevator, staring through us. He wore a suit that had seen better days, and a tie with little whales on it. He looked like a traveling salesman from a book. "Is there a problem?" he asked, as if the lobby smelled like normal lobby, and not how it actually did. "Yes," the woman said. "Don't go back there. Call the police. Your phone might work." He pulled his phone out, looked at it, frowned. "No service," he said, like he was telling us something we hadn't noticed. "Then we leave," she said. "Where are the stairs?" She moved past him toward the door with masking tape on the latch. "Elevator's fine," the man said to her back. "I took it down already." She stopped at the stairwell door and peeled the tape off the latch with a single clean pull. She slid it into her pocket like a trophy. She pushed the door open and held it out for us. I stepped close. The stairwell smelled like wet concrete and something else. The light was out, or the bulb had burned. It was bright enough to see the first few steps, then darkness below. The railing was sticky under my hand. The woman held her phone out like a flashlight. The salesman didn't move. "Sir," she said to him, "we need you with us." He lifted his suitcase by the handle and rolled it toward us. It made a long rattling sound across the landing. The elevator doors opened behind him and stayed open. The car, idle and empty, lit the wrong shade of blue. The salesman stopped right before the threshold of the stairwell. "You go," he said. "I'll be right behind you. I need to tell my wife I'll be late." "No service," the woman said again, tight. She stepped onto the first step, then the second. I followed her. We moved down carefully, shoes edging the water that had gathered. When we reached the next landing, the light above clicked once and then held. I wish it had stayed off. The wall on that landing was scuffed with black streaks at knee height. There were smears, not like fingerprints, more like someone had leaned their hands there and pushed off with the whole palm. There were shapes near the door to the outside that were not paint. Seeing them in the light of the phone made them worse somehow. The door to the outside had a bar across it and a heavy bolt. The bolt was in place. The steel gleamed where the paint had chipped. The woman tugged it. It didn't give. "This is illegal," she said, the way someone says the sky is blue as a curse. Something shifted above us. Footsteps. A suitcase rolling. "Sir," she called. "Come on." No answer. We climbed back up. There were only 2 floors in this place. The door to our floor was closed. The one to the lobby was open, the elevator still waiting. The salesman was not there. We stepped into the lobby and saw him at the front doors. He had his palms on the glass and his face near to see out. He was talking to someone we couldn't see. "I don't have it," he said. "I told you that last time." He flattened his hands harder. "Don't do this. I don't have it." The woman and I glanced at each other. She took 2 steps toward him. "Who are you talking to?" she asked. The salesman turned slowly. His eyes were wet. There was a bruise under one of them. It looked fresh. "I need to get out," he said. "I can't do another one." "What do you mean?" I asked. The words felt like a coin I had to flip 3 times to land on the right side. "He means he did something," the woman said. She wasn't afraid now. She was angry. "What did you do?" He looked down at his hands like he'd forgotten he had them. Then he looked past us, toward the desk. I didn't want to look at the office again, but my eyes went there as if he'd pulled a string in my neck. The woman started toward him. He backed up. The elevator doors closed with a soft slap, and the sound made me jump. I thought of my bag upstairs. My wallet was in it. My license. Things that felt like they should matter. I thought of the crying I'd heard in the night. I thought of the text about silver, the way it came in like a wrong note. I knew nothing that added up to action. The woman took action. She went straight to the desk again, hopped the little gate, and pulled open drawers like she worked there. She found a ring of keys like people find things in films. She held it up and rattled it. "Emergency exit," she said. "Storage, electrical, outside. We leave now." We left the office and crossed the lobby. The front doors waited like a dare. She tried the first key. No. The second. No. The third slid into the cylinder and stuck and then turned. The bar clicked. The doors moved a fraction and then caught. We all leaned into them. The salesman was there now too, shoulder to glass. He was crying openly, not like someone with a plan, like someone who had been crying for years. The door gave in a sudden jerk. Daylight rushed the lobby. The cold air slapped the smell away. The salesman went first, then the woman, then me. The parking lot looked wrong with the sky above it. The bus sat with its windows blind and dusty. By the dumpster was a pile of broken furniture. The pavement had something ground into it that looked like someone had dropped a stake and tried to smear it away with their shoe. The woman took my arm and pulled me toward a car. "I'll drive," she said. "I don't know you," I said, and hated how small I sounded. "Suit yourself," she said. She got into her car with the cool speed of a person who always expects their plans to work. The salesman was pacing. He had a hand on his mouth, rubbing the skin below his lower lip raw. "I left my bag," I said, because some dumb part of me still couldn't let go, even in that stretch of air and light. He looked at me like I was speaking an old language. "We should go," he said. "They don't like it if we don't go when the door opens." "Who?" I asked. He shook his head. He got into an old sedan and started it. The woman's car turned over. I stood alone for 3 seconds because my brain was a dish with water in it, and someone had just kicked it hard. Then I moved. I opened my car and threw myself in. When I turned my key, nothing happened. I tried again and the engine clicked, dead. The salesman's sedan reversed fast, too fast, and fishtailed out of the lot. The woman's car followed him. She didn't look at me. I leaned my head back and laughed once. Then I stopped laughing. I punched my steering wheel, then grabbed my bag of chargers and cables and a flashlight. I got out. I held the flashlight up to look at my battery like it could tell me anything. A cable was loose. I tightened it by hand, cursing because my fingers slipped and my nails bent. I tried again. The car coughed and then turned over. I put the car in drive. I looked in the rear view. The hotel was behind me. The lobby doors were still open. The old man was still on the floor in an office I couldn't see from here, but I knew he was there. The stairwell door on the second floor clicked shut, as if a wind had caught it, even though the day was still. The masking tape lay like a skin on the floor. I should have left. This is the part where I wish I wrote down that I did. Maybe I could be another person in another place. But I put the car back in park and turned it off, and pockets of quiet rushed in around me. I went back inside. I don't have a reason that makes sense written down. I had a bag upstairs with my name on everything, and I thought of that like it was a dog that would be lost without me. Also, part of me wanted to see. I don't know what you call that part. Curiosity. Rot. The muscle that pulls you toward the thing you shouldn't touch. In the lobby, the radio in the office told a joke. The punchline was about a chicken. The voice laughed by itself because no one else was there to join it. I went to the elevator and pressed the button. The light came on at once, as if a hand behind the panel had been waiting to throw the switch. The doors opened. The car was empty, the floor sticky, a coffee stirrer abandoned in one corner. I stepped in. The doors shut. The car moved. When it slid open on my floor, I saw the woman with the college sweatshirt. She stood next to my door. She had her hands in her pockets. Her hair had come loose from its neat braids. She looked like a person who had other things to do and wanted to get them over with. "I can't get out," she said in the tone people use to report the weather. "I saw you drive away," I said. "I drove to the roadblock," she said. "They're turning people around. There's a tow truck stuck across the lane, like someone put it sideways on purpose. The cops are there, but they're talking. Nobody is moving. I went around the back way, and there's a gate that wasn't there yesterday. There's a camera on the gate. It follows you. I tried to go back to the highway, and there was a new sign. It said hotel guests only." "Okay," I said, because I had nothing. "I came back for you," she said. "Don't make me regret it." Her saying that made a small warmth in my chest, the first warmth of the day, and then it went away because the door across from mine opened. A young man looked out. He had the bare face of somebody not long out of school. He wore a polo embroidered with the name of a pest control company. He was barefoot. His right foot was red up to the ankle with something that looked like paint, and was not. "Can I help you?" he asked, as if we had knocked. The woman and I blinked. "What happened to your foot?" she asked. He looked down. "Slipped," he said. "On what?" He shut the door in our faces. She and I looked at each other the way people do in elevators when someone farts. A brief, embarrassed acknowledgement that we are trapped here together. She made a decision. "Get your stuff," she said. "We're going to the manager's apartment." I'm getting the master key from her if I have to kick her door in. I went into my room and grabbed my bag. I checked the bathroom like a fool, pulled back the shower curtain, saw myself in the mirror with my mouth open like someone who had cut off a scream halfway. I stuffed my toothbrush into my pocket. I was stalling. I knew I was stalling. I left. The manager's apartment was on the first floor behind the breakfast room. We knocked. No answer. We tried the knob. It was unlocked. Inside it was neat and smelled like onion powder. A TV murmured with a sound barely there. The couch had a crocheted blanket folded on it. There were framed photographs on the wall of a woman with large sunglasses and a small dog. There was a bowl of dog food on the floor, wet and untouched. There was a sound from the bathroom. A fan. The light was on. The woman went first. She pushed the bathroom door with 2 fingers like it was hot. It swung open and hit something soft with a low sound. She froze, then leaned. I looked over her shoulder. In the bathtub, the manager lay on her side in a pink bathrobe. The tub was full of water the color of tea. Her hair spread across the surface like seaweed. One arm lay on the edge of the tub, slack as a towel. There was a plastic bag on the floor with a drugstore logo. Inside the bag was a bottle of cold medicine, toothpaste, a small carton of milk. The receipt was folded in half with a quarter on top as a paperweight. The paper had bled where a drop had fallen. I looked away and saw myself in the mirror again. I had a fleck of something on my cheek. I rubbed it off and felt sick doing it, like vanity could erase the fact of what I'd just seen. The woman turned, as pale as I felt. "We have to stop walking into rooms," she said. "We have to find a police officer or somebody in uniform." "Where?" I asked. She didn't answer. She wiped the side of the bathtub with a towel where her hand had touched, and then made a face because what did it matter now? She took the towel and dropped it onto the floor, then lifted it again, as if the placement mattered. She's probably like me, I thought, from a family where you pick things up and put them back when you don't know what else to do. We left the apartment. The hallway had changed the way a room changes when somebody turns a light on somewhere you can't see. There were voices at the far end, male voices. Then a sound that was not a voice. It was a thud, and then a wet, messy noise. The woman took a step back into the apartment. I grabbed her arm and pulled her forward instead. We went past the laundry room. The door with the keypad was open now. I saw a wall of black monitors in there, each showing a different angle of the hotel. On one screen was the corridor by my room. On another, the outside door with the heavy bolt. On another, the lobby with the apples. On one, the breakfast room right next to us. In that feed, the young man from the pest control room lay on the floor with his hand over his face. Someone else stood over him. The person standing seemed to be holding a tool, something short and heavy. It took me a long second to understand what it was. A can of paint. Not paint. Raid. The young man's body jerked. The person standing raised the can and brought it down again. Not like a weapon. More like they were nailing something into place. I think I made a sound. The woman pushed me into the keypad room and pulled the door shut. Careful. Quick. We stood in the dark face to face. Her breath hit my cheeks. The fan in the server rack hummed like a hive. She put her finger to her lips. I nodded. We watched the screens. The man with the can bent and did something out of frame. The pest control kid kicked weakly. The can came down again and again. The rhythm was wrong for a fight. It was the rhythm of someone stapling paper to a wall. Then the kid stopped moving. The man with the can stood and wiped his face with his palm and left a streak on himself. He looked up at the camera and smiled in a way that did not belong in any face. He walked toward the camera. He was the salesman with the whale tie. The woman dug her nails into my forearm. I could feel each crescent. On another screen, the stairwell showed two figures hunched near the outside door, like they were listening for us. On another, the lobby showed the old man still on the office floor, the radio doing its best without him. On another, the second floor camera showed my room door. It was ajar. It had not been ajar when I left. The woman leaned close to my ear. "We're leaving through the laundry chute," she said. "I don't think there is one," I said. She opened a cabinet beside the rack and showed me a square cut into the wall behind the shelves. A linen chute. It was barely big enough for a person. Maybe I could fit. She could fit. The salesman could not. The thought brought me a bleak joy. She shut the cabinet and looked at me. "You go first," she said. "I'm not leaving you," I said, and believed it as much as I could. She smiled with real humor for the first time that day. "I'm not asking," she said. "You're heavier. If you go second, we both get stuck." I opened the cabinet again and stuffed my bag in first. It wedged, then slid. I put my arms up and worked my shoulders through the square like trying to birth myself. The metal scraped my ribs. 7 seconds of true panic took me by the throat and shook me hard. My elbows cleared and I dropped. I hit a pile of towels, unrolled, and banged into the wall. I lay for a second in a nest of fabric that smelled like bleach and skin. I stood. I had landed in a laundry bin. The laundry room was empty. There was a door to the outside with a push bar. It held. It did not open. There was a key cylinder there too. I looked for keys. None. There was a hole in the wall where a phone should be. There was a calendar with kittens and the boxes marked with names. Lara off, Vic Day, Mrs. K. In the square for today, someone had written in pencil, County Inspection. The chute above me thumped. The woman slid down and landed like a cat. She straightened, brushed her hands together and nodded. For a second we both grinned like idiots because we had done a thing and it had actually worked. Then the grin melted off my face as the door to the laundry room from the hall swung in. The salesman filled the doorway. He had the can in his hand. There were flecks on his tie. He looked at us like we were customers asking for an upgrade. "You shouldn't be back here," he said mildly. The woman reached past me without looking and grabbed the first thing her hand found. It was the mop handle. She held it with both hands like a bat. "You should go," she said. He sighed. He looked older now and younger both. "I keep telling them they're asking the wrong people," he said. "But they don't listen if they don't get it." "Get what?" He touched the corner of his mouth and winced, like a sore tooth was back there. "The silver," he said, as if it were a grocery list item that someone forgot. "They say it's here. They say it always comes in with someone. We're supposed to find it and give it to them, and then we can go." "What if we don't?" I asked. "Then they make you do a thing like I did," he said. His face softened. He actually looked ashamed. "But if we give them the silver, then they let us out. We can go. I tried the first time. The lady with the dog. I asked her for it. She said no. So I did what they wanted. It took me a long time. I'm not very strong." The woman swallowed. "What happens if we give them nothing?" she asked. He looked at the floor. "Then they check the next room." We all stood very still. I heard the trickle of the ravine outside like a faucet in the next apartment. The salesman lifted the can. It was dented and heavy. He took a step in. The woman jabbed with the mop. It connected with his wrist with a sound like a stick on a fence. He cried out. The can dropped and rolled, a dull metal rumble. He grabbed the mop and yanked. The woman held on. They were face to face, teeth bared in effort. I moved without thought. I picked up the can. It was heavier than I'd guessed. I swung. It hit his shoulder. He staggered. I swung again. It hit something softer. He made a sound that started high and ended in a grunt. He went to one knee. The woman used the mop like a staff and drove the end into his throat with a short, practiced motion. He made that bad, wet sound again, and then he fell all the way, knees sliding out from under him, head hitting the tile with a hollow knock. I dropped the can. It rang. The woman and I stood and panted. She lowered the mop carefully, as if she was afraid to break it after it had done a service. "We have to move," she said. "We have to move now." We stepped around him. His fingers fluttered like birds trying to get up a chimney. The heady rush in me was already turning to something else, a lead that wanted to sit in my stomach and stay there. We went into the hallway. It was clear. The camera above us had a little red dot. I looked at it like it was a person. "Where's the silver?" I said. The words made me feel stupid again, but I said them. The woman looked at me, then at my bag in my hand, then at her own pockets. She reached into her hoodie and took out the strip of masking tape she had peeled off the stairwell door. She held it up. It looked like nothing. "You think it's this?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. Try it. We went to the outside door. We put the tape on the bolt. It felt childish. The tape wrinkled around the edges and didn't sit flat. We stood back. Nothing happened. The woman laughed once and caught it with her teeth before it could escape. "Christ," she said. The young man in the polo rounded the corner then. His right foot smudged red with every step. His eyes were wide and clear. He had a knife now. It wasn't ours. It was a kitchen knife with a black handle. There was a notch missing out of the edge. He saw us and smiled without humor. There was a long white hair stuck to his shirt that might have been from a dog. "You got it?" he asked. His voice was calm. He looked down the hall toward the laundry room. He saw the salesman on the floor. He nodded once as if approving. "Good. Then we're close." "Stay back," the woman said. She held the mop up again, the end near his face. He shrugged. "You'll get tired before I do," he said. "They've got all the time in the world." "Who?" I asked, and hated myself for asking again. But every part of this wanted a name. He pointed up, not to the ceiling, but past it, as if the building had a third floor nobody could see. "The owners," he said. "You check in, you pay, you stay, you work. That's the deal, man. They show you a list of chores and you do them or they hold the door. That's how it is." "Not for me," the woman said. "Move." He didn't. He did the opposite. He came forward with the knife loose in his hand like he'd been born with it. He slid left when the mop came right. He was fast. The woman was fast too, but he was younger. He kept his eyes on her hands and not on her face or the floor. He stepped in and grabbed the wood with his free hand and jerked it. She let go in time and the mop took him off balance. He stumbled. I stepped in and put my shoulder into him. We slammed into the wall. The knife bit into the dry wall and stuck for a second, and that was the second she needed. The woman pulled his jaw sideways with one hand and drove her other thumb into his eye. He screamed, a high child sound. He fell to the floor and curled. She kicked him in the ribs twice, short, messy kicks, not movie kicks, and his body folded. Then she stepped back, breathing hard, face shining. I picked up the knife. It was heavier than it looked. The paint notch on the edge dug into my thumb. The kid moaned and put his hand over his face. Blood leaked between his fingers and strings. I wanted to throw up, but I wanted more to keep moving. We went. We left him in the hall. The back office with the camera wall had controls under the monitors. There were keys on a hook there, labeled. None of them said front door in tidy handwriting. One said ELEC, one said CLEANING, one said ROOF, one said PANICBAR. I took PANICBAR. We went to the outside door near the laundry and tried the key. It turned. The bar clicked. The door opened. Sunlight. We pushed into the light and air as if through a membrane. The parking lot out back had the dumpster and the broken furniture and a cluster of cigarette butts ground into a circle like a crop circle for smokers. A cat ran under a car and stayed there, trembling. I wanted to crawl under there with it. The woman had the mop still. She dropped it now. She put her hands on her knees and breathed. Then she looked at me and stood straight. "We're not coming back," she said. "We go straight. Don't look behind us." We went. We didn't run, because running would have made me trip. We walked with our arms held the way people hold their arms when they've been shot and don't want to jostle the wound. The ravine behind the hotel ran with water that looked clean and probably wasn't. We cut along the lip and then picked our way down where the dirt looked like steps. The edging of the water smelled like iron. Farther along there was a gap in the fence where the chain had been cut and then twisted back together. We went through, scraping our jackets, breath loud in our ears. On the other side of the fence was a strip mall with a nail salon and a vacant space with paper on the windows. A woman smoked behind the salon, arms folded. She watched us in a way that said she had seen worse. I said, "We need a phone." She pointed with her chin. "They don't work," she said. Storm took the tower. "Where's the police station?" the woman asked. Her voice was simple and devout, like a prayer. The smoker took a long moment. "Down the street," she said. "But if you walk in there from that direction, they won't see you." She pointed the other way, toward the road we'd been blocked on before. "Go around past the car wash." We did. We did not look back. The hotel sat there pretending to be a hotel, small and ordinary, paint flaking, apples on the counter. It would always be that when you looked at it from far away. You'd never know what was inside unless you went in. And even then you might not know until it wanted you to. At the police station we told them everything. They walked us through it like you walk a child across a busy street. They made calls on radios that worked even though phones didn't. They asked us our names. We gave them. We gave them the name of the clerk, which we didn't know, and they nodded like it was a name they recognized. They sent a car. Later, a woman officer came back pale and unfriendly. She told us to sit. We sat. The station smelled like coffee and vinyl. She read from a pad. They had found a body in the office, yes. The office door had been open, yes. The front doors were also open. The breakfast room was empty. The laundry room was empty. The manager's apartment was simple and neat with no signs of struggle. No tub, no water, no towel on the floor. She said these things without looking at me. She said them like I was a kid who had lied and she was making me sit in it. "What about the cameras?" I asked. "There's a whole wall." "There are no cameras," she said. "What about—" I stopped because if I said the word salesman, I would have to say the other words tied to it. And then I would have to say the kid, and the can, and the knife, and the way my arm still felt from where the mop had hit him. And then I would have to live forever with the sound he made. "The owner would like you to return the key," the officer said. "She says it's the only copy for that door." "The owner?" the woman asked. "Where is she?" "She's at the hotel," the officer said. "They're open." I laughed. The officer didn't smile. I handed over the key. It had a cheap aluminum tag on it, stamped with a number. No word. No panic bar. They let us go after they took our statements, and our statements were short because neither of us could push the words past what we had seen. The woman with the college sweatshirt asked for a ride to the highway. They gave it to her. She didn't look at me as they led her out. I think she blamed me for going back upstairs, and I think she was right. In the same way I think about gravity and the way it wins every time. I got a room at a different motel that night, a big chain with a fake fireplace in the lobby. I sat on the bed and looked at the curtains and thought of how every room is the same with the lights off, and how some have wrongness folded into the sheets. I checked the door 3 times. I told myself I'd leave at dawn and never come back to this town, When I closed my eyes, I saw the salesman's face when he looked up at the camera and smiled. I saw the kid's foot as he left a red track down the hall. I saw the apples. I saw the strip of masking tape, dirty at the edges, pressed against metal to do a job it wasn't built for. I slept anyway. Our bodies insist. They drag us into darkness whether the darkness belongs to us or not. In the morning, I would drive away and tell nobody anything. I could do that, and the world would keep being the world. I knew I wouldn't tell the story at parties. I knew I wouldn't even tell it to myself, not in full. I would open my mouth and a softer version would come out. I would turn the parts that caught into something gentler. Before I fell all the way asleep, my phone buzzed once on the nightstand. I rolled over and picked it up and stared at the screen. It was a number I didn't know. The text said simply, "Did you find the silver yet?" The word "yet" sat at the end like a hook. I deleted it and turned the phone off and lay in the dark, hands flat against the covers, waiting to see if the door would stay a door. The hum of the air conditioner sounded like an ice machine somewhere else in the building, and somewhere in the world. Apples were sitting under a handwritten sign that said, "Please take one," and someone was taking one who didn't need it, and someone else was watching, and they were waiting with a list of chores in a language you don't learn until you check in. I worked nights at a mid-range place off the ring road, not a chain with a fountain and jazz in the lobby, the kind with a breakfast room that smells like waffles after 11, even though the waffle iron is off. I didn't love the job, but I liked the quiet hours and the way the building became mine. When the day crew left at 11, it was me, a laundry attendant until 1, and a security guy who wandered once an hour and then fell asleep in his car. If you've ever worked a hotel front desk, you know the rhythm. A burst of check-ins when the highway spits people out, a lull, then the lonely hours. Someone comes down because the TV remote won't work. Someone else wants to know why the air conditioner turns off and on by itself. And there's always a man who asks, very casual, who's in the room next to his, and whether they look like they're staying long. On a Tuesday in February, we got a new long stay. Room 117, ground floor near the east exit. The reservation came in through a corporate portal for a company I didn't recognize. The name on it was T. Kane. No first name. The rate was good. "Love to see it," my manager said, signing a paper with her latte balanced on the photocopier. "Long stays keep the lights on." He checked in late, almost midnight, wearing a black hoodie under a gray coat. He slid an ID under the plexiglass without looking up. The license was from out of state and old, edges worn, laminate bubbled. He handed me a credit card that matched the name and said he'd be here a week, maybe 2. He asked for extra towels and extra trash bags. People ask for that. It didn't ping then. He had a way of being both present and not. He answered questions quickly, not rude, but as if I were reading a script he'd memorized. When I slid the key card over, he didn't say thanks. He didn't take the luggage card. He didn't need it. He had a rolling black duffel, a backpack that looked heavy, and a small hard case with a broken corner. "Breakfast 7 to 10, I said, because you always say something to mark the end of the check-in. "Pool's closed." He nodded, looked at the tray of mints like they were for someone else, and walked away. Housekeeping told me later he put the Do Not Disturb sign up as soon as he got inside and kept it up. That's not special. We have people who live under those little red signs. The only time they lower them is to ask for fresh towels or to crack the door 2 inches and take a pizza box. But the next day, when I came in at 11, the day clerk slid a note to me with a smile that wasn't a smile. "Your guy in 117?" she said. The note was from Maria, one of the housekeepers. It said, "Strong smell, like glue or new carpet. Towels stained, sink drains slow. He said no service. Please check." I walked the East Hall after midnight. It's the easiest time to do a pass without people staring. The carpet there always holds a smell of wet shoes. The side exit had a magnet that was supposed to click it shut. Someone had stuck a folded napkin under the strike so it wouldn't latch. I pulled it out and threw it away. When I got to 117, the air did have a smell. Not smoke, not pot. Chemical sweet with a sharp edge under it. I stood a second listening. No TV, no voice, no movement. I told myself to keep going, and I did. At 2 a.m, the main phone rang. The display said outside line. A man's voice spoke fast and clipped. He said he was with our brand's corporate security. We had to do a compliance test, live. He rattled off my property number and my manager's name. He got the late night code right. People can find these things, but it felt inside. He said the test was about safety. He asked me to check that all side exits latched. He asked me to check that housekeeping closets were locked. He asked me to test a few fire doors. Then he asked me to go to room 117 and verify privacy status. He used that phrase. I said, "We don't disturb guests after 10 unless there's a noise complaint." He said he understood, and that was why he needed me to do it, to make sure I knew the policy. He said just tap the door with your knuckle and listen for a response. He said to note the time. I went. He kept me on the line. The hallway looked the same. The exit door had another napkin in the strike, even though I had just removed one. I pulled it and kept it in my fist. At 117, I knocked softly. I didn't expect any answer, and I didn't want one. I was ready to put it down as no response and move on. The door opened a crack. The chain was on. I saw an eye and a strip of cheek. "What?" "Sorry to bother you," I said. "Night audit. Just confirming you're okay and don't need anything." A pause, like he was deciding if he had time to kill me. Then the chain slid closed and the door opened another 6 inches. He stayed behind it. I saw the edge of the bed and the corner of the desk. The room was very neat. Suitcase zipped. Remote in its caddy. The air had that sweet chemical smell multiplied by heat. He said, "I'm fine. No service." Then he shut the door. On the phone, the corporate man said, "Thank you," and told me to note it. He had me check a fire door. He ended the call with, "Good work." I wrote the contact down, time and number, and taped the paper to the cash drawer for my manager. It felt like throwing a pebble into a lake and listening for a splash you might have imagined. Wednesday. A woman in 220 called down at 3 with a complaint about footsteps in the hall and a man rattling her door handle like he had the wrong room. She was crying by the end. I went up with a spare key to walk her floor. The hallway was empty and smelled like microwave popcorn. The peephole in 222 had been popped out and turned around so you could look in. That one always bothered me. We order replacements, but someone takes them again. I told her I'd keep an eye out and offered to move her. She was alone traveling for a job training and didn't want to repack, and I understood that. Thursday, Maria knocked on 117 at 10:30 with her cart loaded. No answer. She put a yellow card under the door. Please call if you need service. At noon, the card was still there. At 2, gone. She told my manager. My manager told her to leave it. That afternoon, a van with the company name on Kane's reservation pulled into the lot. 2 men in branded jackets came in, didn't make eye contact, and asked for our guy T. I called the room. No answer. I left a message. The men waited a few minutes, then left. They didn't look irritated. They looked like they'd known he wouldn't pick up. Friday night, the laundry attendant called out sick, and the security guy was late. The hotel felt bigger for it, more surface to cover. I did my round at 1. The east exit had a third napkin folded into the strike, this time a piece of a breakfast flyer instead. I pulled it and set it in my pocket with the others. I stood in front of 117 and told myself I was doing it because of the smell report. I knocked. No answer. I put my ear to the door and hated myself for doing it. I heard the faint hiss of the heater. Nothing else. When I got back to the desk, the phone rang. Internal line. It was the house phone by the east door. Nobody spoke. I heard the breath of the building. Heater. Faint cough in a pipe. Then the line clicked off. I watched the camera. That hall's camera had been fuzzy all week, like someone had smeared the lens. I made a note for maintenance. Saturday, 4 rooms checked in late for a youth sports tournament. The parents roll through like weather, loud and self-certifying. It was near midnight when the elevator opened, and a man in a bicycling jacket came out, pushing a strange smell in front of him. He said there was a light out in the stairwell and a puddle by the ice machine. I told him I'd file it, and I did. And I also went and changed the bulb myself. The puddle was melted ice from a kid's cup. When I turned back, Kane was there at the end of the hall. He had come out of 117 without my hearing the door. He held a small white trash bag looped in one hand. He started when he saw me like a kid caught out after lights out. Maintenance, I said, because I didn't know how else to justify standing there. He nodded and walked toward the exit. He had to pass me. The smell that came with him was bad in a way that doesn't announce itself. It crawls into your nose and hides. Bleach over something organic. I thought of raw chicken rinsed in a sink. As he passed, he said, "The toilet gurgles sometimes. If you can do something." "I'll put in a ticket," I said, because I was done pretending to be maintenance for real. Gurgling isn't a night thing. He pushed through the exit. It didn't latch again when it shut. I stepped forward and pulled it tight until I heard the magnetic click, then opened it to watch him walk to the dumpster and lift the lid with one hand. He threw the bag in with that same quick, practiced move. He didn't look around. He walked back. "Door keeps sticking," he said, brushing past me. "No, sorry. No thanks." Sunday. The smell in the east hallway made one of the tournament dads complain. He said it was like a nail salon, and a locker room had a baby. He had his kid standing behind him with a soccer ball under his arm, blinking. I said we were investigating. He asked for a discount. I gave him $10 off, which is the amount we're allowed without a manager code. He took it like I owed him a second one. When I came in Monday night, my manager met me with a look that told me she had already walked through the day in her head and didn't like it. "Call from corporate," she said. "Did you do a compliance test with them last week?" "Yeah, Tuesday. Next time, tell me before you go knocking on rooms. We only wake people up if the building is on fire." "I didn't wake him," I said. "He opened it." She squinted. "Who opened what?" 117. "Kane." She shook her head. "T. Kane checked out this morning." I looked past her at the rack of paper folders we keep for long stays. 117's pocket was empty. "He came in and dropped the keys?" I asked, even though we haven't used physical keys in 5 years. "He left before shift," she said. "Rooms on D&D. He extended online for one more night 3 times this week, and then stopped. Card went through. Maybe he'll be back. Leave him." Maria said there was a smell. She says everything smells. Use the neutralizer if someone complains. She handed me a bottle with a white spray head and a label that said ODORGONE and walked back to her office. I stood with the bottle like it was a microphone, and I was waiting for my song. Around midnight, 220 called again. Not crying this time, just flat. She said someone had tried her door again, softly, like testing. I said I would come up. I did the walk on her floor, then the next. No one. 117's D&D sign still hung from the knob, edges curled. The bottle in my hand felt stupid. I sprayed ODORGONE into the air and hated myself for the gesture. At 2, the fire panel beeped. Not the big alarm. A trouble light. Stairwell smoke detector offline. I called our on-call maintenance line and got voicemail. I wrote it down. I made another round. The east exit had the napkin in the strike again, a 4th one. I pulled it in. This time, I kept the door open with my hip and checked the outside knob. It had scratches around it, deep and narrow. The kind a flat piece of metal leaves when you try to jimmy it. When I came back in and let the door close, I heard a muffled sound behind me, like someone exhaling hard into a pillow. It took me a full second to realize it was coming from room 117 through the door. It stopped the moment I knew what it was. I stood there and told myself reasons. Plumbing, television, a neighbor, a pipe. The moment stretched. I went to the office and took the long key ring out of the drawer. There is a key stamped Master. It doesn't open rooms when the deadbolt is thrown, but it opens the door if the latch is what's holding it. I signed it out on the sheet with the time. I told myself I was doing a welfare check. I told myself I'd knock 5 times, announce, and walk away if I heard any movement at all. I knocked. Front desk. Welfare check. I put my ear to the door again. I hated myself. Nothing. I slid the key in and turned it. The latch made a small, greedy click. The door opened an inch. The chain stopped it with a little jerk. I saw darkness and a smell came through that the spray bottle would never beat. "Front desk," I said, a little louder. Something moved inside. Not a step. A shift of air. I closed the door and walked away. I called the police. I said the words I'd practiced in my head. Guest checked out. D&D still up. Strong odor. Possible biohazard. I felt like a person calling in a bomb threat from a payphone in a movie. 2 officers arrived fast. not sirens, just lights. They were tired but professional. I led them to 117. One knocked hard and called out. Another stood to the side. They waited. Then the first pried the chain with a tool on his belt like he'd done it before. The chain gave. The door swung open. He stepped in and used his flashlight. He made a noise that was not quite a curse. He told us to stay in the hall. But the door was open, and the angle let me see enough. The room was clean in the wrong way. Everything that could be stripped had been stripped. The mattress leaned against the wall. The carpet had a square of darker color near the foot of the bed where something had sat. The desk was empty. The curtains were tied back. In the bathroom, the shower curtain was gone, and the rod was in the tub. The tub held 3 contractor bags and a tangle of hangers, all slashed into hooks. On the vanity sat a bottle of drain opener turned on its side, cap off, empty. A towel under it had burned holes. The mirror had been wiped with something harsh that left streaks you could only see in the beam of the flashlight. There was no body. There were no obvious signs of one, unless you counted the way the drain ringed a little dark, and the bottom of the shower had scuffs like something heavy had been dragged in and out. The odor told the rest. They cleared the room. They asked me for the check-in details, copies of the ID, the credit card slip. I printed what I had. The ID scan had streaked, and the middle of his face was a blur. The card cleared from a bank with an address that matched nothing. The van with the company logo hadn't come back. A third officer arrived with a camera and took photographs while standing in the doorway. They didn't want to touch much. One of them found a length of tape, the thick silver kind, pressed to the underside of the desk. It had hair stuck to the glue. He folded the tape over it, sticking it to itself with his gloved fingers, and dropped it into a bag. They told me I'd get a call from a detective. They told me if the guest came back, I should not engage. They put a seal on the door. It was a blue paper strip with a warning and a badge. I watched them drive off, 3 separate cars, all without sirens. The east door clicked and held when I tested it. I didn't go pull on the dumpster lid. I didn't want to know if it resisted. At 8, my manager arrived and said, "What the hell, Noah?" It came out like I had burned toast. I walked her through it. She blanched at the phrase contractor bags and used a tissue to dab at the corners of her eyes without smudging her eyeliner. "We can't afford this," she said. "We can't have a crime story on the property." "It's not exactly up to us," I said. "It is if it's nothing," she said. "If he left a mess and skipped, it's a guest damage fee and a deep clean and no story. Don't talk to anyone. If anyone calls, send them to me." 3 days later, a man in a suit came in with a leather folder and introduced himself as our owner's regional. He shook my hand and the manager's and went directly to his real business. He asked to see the camera footage for the East Hall for the previous week and the dumpster area. I gave him the drive. He said he'd bring it back in an hour. He didn't. Detectives called once, left a message, and I called back and got a voicemail. They called again a week later and asked me to describe the guest. I said, average height, hoodie, coat, soft voice, no eye contact. The detective said, a lot, and never asked me about the napkins in the door. Housekeeping deep cleaned 117 with masks and gloves. Maria didn't make jokes for a week after. The maintenance guy replaced the drain hardware, A plumber came and nodded at whatever he saw and sent us an invoice that made my manager roll her eyes. The seal went away. We put the room back in service with a new bed and a rug to cover a square that wouldn't come clean. The smell settled back to the hotel's baseline. Microwave, pool chemical, old carpet. A month passed. We heard nothing. The slot where 117's paper folder had been now held a different long stay. A woman with a dog. She kept the place neater than I do my own apartment. The napkin under the strike stopped appearing. At the end of March, a news story came through a feed on the front desk computer. Not a big headline, just a local. Human remains discovered off the service road near the industrial park. Construction crew found a bag in a ditch. I clicked. The article didn't say much more than that. No names, no cause. Comments were turned off. I printed it and slid it under the edge of my blotter and didn't mention it. I didn't want to see my manager do the math and then choose not to show her work. 2 weeks after that, a woman came to the desk with a flyer. Her name was Elise. The flyer had the face of a young man on it and a phone number. Her hands shook while she spoke. She said her brother had last texted from the highway. He'd said he was pulling off to rest. His last credit card charge was at our property. 2 sodas from the vending machine. He hadn't used his card again. I told her what I was allowed to, that the police had been here, that they had a report, that I couldn't share guest details without a warrant. I gave her the non-emergency number for the department and the name of the detective who'd left me the voicemail. She thanked me anyway, like I'd given her more than a phone number. After she left, I watched the feed for the east hallway on the day she said. Our cameras retain a couple of weeks unless someone pulls the drive. The file stuttered and jumped. The 5 minutes around midnight looked wrong, pixelated, like a bad stream. I checked the log for who had signed out the master key on that date. No one had. The line for that night had a faint dent, like someone had pressed a pen against the paper and then changed their mind. I asked our security guy, Roz, if he'd been awake that night. He smirked and said, always, then fell asleep in the chair across from the laundry room 20 minutes later. I watched the rise and fall of his chest and wanted to kick him and wanted to give him my blanket both at once. In April, I put in my notice. Not because of one thing. Because every time I walked past 117 and saw a new guest's shoes outside, I thought of the bath hardware and the tape and the quiet voice that said the toilet gurgles, like we were roommates. Because every napkin someone stuck in the side exit strike made me picture a hand that wasn't mine. Because the owner's man never returned the drive. And when I asked, my manager said, he took care of it, in a voice that meant stop talking. I got a job at another hotel across town. New carpet, new logo smell, fresh uniforms in plastic. I told myself it would be different because the lobby had plants that were real, and because the owner's picture on the wall was a woman's, and she looked like she'd send you home if you had a fever. For a week, it was all onboarding and learning which ice machine worked, and which printer only pretended to. My body relaxed into the new building's rhythms. The side exits here had slow, heavy closers that thumped your shoulder when you pushed them and latched without complaint. The laundry room smelled like lemons. The cameras were clear. On my second Friday, a man checked in at 11:30. Hoodie, gray coat. He slid an ID under the plexi. New state this time, not the same. The edges of it were crisp, so crisp they felt wrong. The card he gave me had the exact weight of a bank card, but no depth to the numbers. The reservation came through a corporate portal with T. Kane in the name field. He asked for a ground floor room near the side exit. He asked for extra trash bags. He asked if we had a loaner plunger, just in case. I stared at his knuckles while he spoke. The skin between the bones looked shiny, healed from something. Small pale threads rimmed his nails. My mouth said, "We can get you extra towels." My hand slid 2 keys across, and I hated my hand for doing it. I went on my break and stood in the alley and called the detective from the other town. The number rang, then rang. A recorded voice told me the mailbox was full. I hung up. I looked up the non-emergency number here. I told a woman at a desk that a guest matched someone from a previous incident. She asked me if I wanted to make a formal report, or if this was an FYI. I felt stupid saying FYI, so I said report. And she asked me for times and details, and whether there was a crime. I said not yet, and writing those words down broke something in my head I'd been keeping upright. I went back inside and walked the ground floor. The side exit nearest 119 caught halfway before it latched. Someone had folded a corner of our breakfast placemat and slid it into the strike. I pulled it and tossed it and held the door tight until the magnet caught. I looked down the hall at 119. The Do Not Disturb sign already hung from the knob. It wasn't ours. Ours are soft plastic with the hotel name. This one was a cardstock circle with an eye printed in the middle and the word please in pale gray. Some people bring their own. I stood there and felt the way I had, months before. Stupid, righteous, scared, certain that if I opened the door a crack, the world would show me a piece of itself it doesn't give back. When I turned to go, a man in a nice suit stepped through the side exit as if he had a key. He was average height with average hair and average eyes, and his smile was the kind you use for insurance clients. Warm enough to pretend, cool enough to close. He had a leather folder tucked under his arm. "Evening," he said. "Can I help you?" I asked. He laughed a little, a puff, as if I'd made a joke. He tapped the gold name badge pinned to his lapel. It said Regional Operations, then a first name and a last initial. It was the same style as the ones we wore, down to the font. He smelled like aftershave in a car with a good filter. "I'll need the camera drive for this wing," he said. We had an alert about artifacts in the recording. Just a quick swap. I kept my hands in my pockets so he wouldn't see them shake. "We don't swap those without the GM," I said. "She's off until Monday." He smiled again, smaller this time. "I know," he said. "That's why I'm doing it now." He held my eye a second longer than a normal person would. Not a threat, an assessment. He lifted the folder a half-inch as if to say, "Paper exists. What else do you need?" Behind him, down the hall, 119's DND tag swung a little in the air from the shift pressure of the closing door. I should have said no. I should have hit a key combo on the phone and asked the real GM from home if she knew this man. I should have done so many shoulds that I felt dizzy in the middle of them. Instead, I said, "I'll call her," and reached for the phone because that was one thing between doing nothing and doing it his way. His smile slipped a centimeter. He put the folder down on the hall table that holds the maps and rack cards and the bowl of mints. He rested his fingers on the leather and tapped once, soft, like he was remembering a song. "Noah," he said, "we've done this before. You're good at your job. Keep the lights on. Keep the guests happy. Keep the cameras from filling up with nothing." Hearing my name come out of his mouth scraped every inside surface I have. I hadn't pinned my name badge on yet. The alley air still sat on my skin, and I hadn't done the mirror check. He picked up the folder and walked past me without waiting for my answer. He went toward the back office with the server rack as if he already knew the code. I didn't follow him. I stood in the hall with the breath of the HVAC on my cheek and listened to the exit latch, clean and sure, and to the soft click from inside 119 as someone set a chain on a door. I didn't go to the back office. I went to the front desk. I reached under the counter and took out the long key ring, the one with the master tag that doesn't work on deadbolts. I signed it out in a line that was firm and neat. I put the ring in my pocket. I stood and watched the clock take 2 slow minutes. Then I called the police and said, "I need an officer to meet me at the hotel." Now I said the address. I said, "It's about a room and a guest and a person who says he's corporate taking our cameras." The dispatcher said someone was on the way. She asked me if I felt safe. I said, "No." While I waited, I did one small thing. I walked to the side exit and, with my cheap penknife from the lost and found box, I dug at the metal of the strike plate and scored a line around the catch. If someone stuffed a napkin there again, it wouldn't hold. The door would still latch. A petty act, maybe. A way to make a hinge do the thing it was born to. I went back to the desk and stood and looked at the hallway on the monitor. It showed me my own face reflected in the glass, and beyond that, a slice of carpet and a closed door with a neat red circle on the knob. The camera didn't stutter. Not yet. The suit didn't come back to the lobby. The police took longer than I wanted. A couple checked in from the highway, angry and tired. I made 2 keys for them, answered their questions without hearing my own answers. I kept expecting the man from 119 to walk up and ask for more towels, and my hands to hand them over like traitors. When the officer arrived, I walked him to the back office. The door was closed. The keypad had fresh fingerprints on it. I entered the code, and the little green light blinked twice. The server rack hummed. The shelf where we keep the camera drives had an empty space. The label under it said, "East Hall, 1 to 2. "It's probably nothing," the officer said. He was young, and he wanted it to be nothing. He liked his night metal quiet. "It's something," I said. My voice surprised me. It didn't shake. We went to 119. He knocked. He called out. He announced who he was and what hotel he represented. There was a pause that took a piece from me, then a voice from inside, soft and patient. "Just a minute." The officer looked at me in that way you can't read. He put his hand on the grip of his holster without urgency. The lock clicked. The chain slid. The door opened an inch and stopped. "Evening," the man inside said. "Everything okay?" The officer said his lines. "Welfare check," strong odor reported. "Can we take a look?" The voice inside said, "I'm in the bathroom." He laughed, tiny and polite. "Give me a second." The officer said okay. He waited with his boot pinning the bottom of the door so it couldn't slam. The banal competence of someone who had done this before and didn't want to be embarrassed by a hinge. He told the man we'd step in, quick, and leave. The man didn't answer. The bathroom fan hummed. Water ran. The officer looked at me again and said softly, "You did the right thing." I nodded. My hands had gone very, very cold. He opened the door. We stepped inside together. The air sat heavy and wrong. The bathroom fan rattled. The light over the sink was off. The bulb had been unscrewed one turn. The shower curtain was closed and bulged slightly in the middle from the pressure of the air it held against it. We both stood and looked at that bulge and didn't move. Then the officer pulled the curtain open with one sharp jerk. The tub was empty. The water was running around the drain, swirl and glug. The plug lay on the floor. The rod was still up. A bottle of cleaner stood on the edge with the cap on, upright like a waiter. The smell wasn't bleach this time. It was the room's regular smell, coffee and soap, and the faint ghost of the other thing. The main room looked like a catalog photo. Remote in caddy, bed made, suitcase in the luggage rack, the do not disturb card on the desk, neatly folded. The air had a bend in it, like you get after someone's opened a door and shut it again, and the pressure hasn't settled. On the desk, under the DND card, was a local map from our rack. A route marked in pen ran from our hotel to the industrial park, by the service road and back to the highway. The pen lines were very neat, no smudges. We stood there too long. There was no voice. There was no man. The side exit, when I tested it, latched. My petty knife mark held it true. I took a breath that went all the way down and came all the way back. The officer took my statement. He found nothing that counted as a crime he could write down. He left me with a number and a promise to check back. He told me to call if I saw the man again. He told me I had done the right thing twice in case I hadn't heard it the first time. At 3, the printer at the front desk spat out a 2-page fax, even though nobody uses faxes anymore. It was a brand letter about guest privacy and operational excellence, with bullet points and soft language. It reminded staff to respect do not disturb signs. It reminded staff to avoid creating drama. It reminded staff that brand representatives may visit properties at any time, and that managers should empower them to adjust technical settings as needed. At the bottom was a signature block with a name I recognized, the same as the badge. Same first name, same last initial. The timestamp on the fax header was an hour earlier from a number I didn't know. I put the fax in the drawer. I turned off the lobby music because I didn't want to hear a soft cover of a song I used to like. I stood and listened to the building breathe. A water heater clicked. The ice machine spat blanks. Somewhere down the hall, a door latch whispered against a strike plate and caught. We keep a bowl of mints on the counter by habit. When I walked past it, I noticed for the first time there was a different brand mixed into ours, silver wrappers among gold. I picked one up and turned it in my fingers. The paper crinkled. There were no letters on the wrapper, just the color. When I put it back, I saw a mark on the desk where the leather folder had sat, a little half-moon of pressure. It looked like nothing. It looked like the weight of normal life. I went home at 7 and sat on my couch and watched the light come up through the slats. I slept without dreams, then woke with a start because the utility closet in my building hummed like a hotel ice machine, and for a second I was back in the East Hall with my ear to a door. I made coffee. I texted my manager. We need a policy about outside corporate people taking tech. She replied with a thumbs up and, we'll discuss Monday. There's no final act to tell you. No chase, no body, no news story with names and photos, no court date circled. What I have is this. If you work nights long enough, you learn the shape of things that live in the gaps. People come in who like what a hotel gives them. Heat, a door that locks, a second chance to be no one. Most of them are only trying to sleep. A few are doing something else. A few are doing it for someone else. Those someone else's have letterheads and badges you can order online. They have folders that leave marks. They know the code to the room where the cameras live. They know which exits stick. The chilling part, the thing that sits with me now while I write this at my kitchen table, is not what I saw in 117's tub. It's how normal everyone was about it. It's how easy it is to bend a latch with a napkin. It's how many nights I went back to a desk with a bowl of mints and a bottle of spray and a line on a log where my name lives beside a key. It's how, when the man in the suit said my name that second time, my mouth started to say yes before I could tell it to stop.